So one of the things that I've noticed about AI is there's a lot of hype, and I think that the hype is damaging because the possibilities are genuine and real and can be implemented even today in our businesses. So there was a quote that came out from Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI. They're the ones who make ChatGPT. And this has been now referred to as the quote by a lot of people, because this is talking about what AI is capable of doing in positive and negative sense. So he said it'll mean that 95% of what marketers use agencies, strategists and creative professionals for today will be easily, nearly instantly and at almost no cost be handled by AI. So the implication of this is that 95% of marketers, or 95% potentially of knowledge workers, or the work that we're doing as knowledge workers, could totally be handled by AI. So that means that people who are professional services, who are knowledge workers and experts, AI is coming for us first, which is interesting and challenging. So we need to think about that. So that's the kind of the context to all of this. There's been some recent developments, and I just picked a few at random here. There's so many that it's, there's so many things happening. But here's some recent developments that have happened. There's a company called AlphaFold, and what they've done is they've used an AI to generate all possible proteins. So it used to be the case that researchers, they would need to try and test creating proteins, and it would be a process that would take months and years. So AlphaFold have already generated every possible protein that can be created is modeled and mapped out, which means that researchers just now go and look up the directory to see is a protein possible. And that is revolutionizing science and the capabilities with that. Microsoft came out with a tool recently where they could clone a voice, but that's been done before, but they could clone a voice realistically from 3 seconds of audio, which is incredible. And also scary in sense of, creating fakes and all of that kind of stuff as well. So when you think about that, WHO, the World Health Organization, has talked about how they've found more accurate medical diagnosis. So that's a real positive, because misdiagnosis is an issue, and so having more accurate medical diagnosis. There was one thing that they mentioned, which was they could diagnose COVID-19 from the specific sound of a cough. So they were able to tell whether it was a COVID-19 or just a regular cold or flu from the audio of a cough. So that's pretty incredible as well. There's a tool called Sora from OpenAI, which they haven't released to the general public, but it looks very powerful, where they can generate realistic videos from a simple text prompt. And that's going to be something else that's going to be coming down the line. And that will be both pretty cool, as a user, be able to generate videos. Imagine being able to create, ads for your products for Facebook, creating videos. Let's say you could create a video for your kids about, their bedtime story. You could there's like the possibilities are endless, creating educational videos about products, so many different things that we can do with that. So those are all kind of the stuff that's happened recently. Stuff that's coming down the line. There are new models, and ChatGPT 5 is probably already ready. So GPT-4 is the one that we're using at the moment. It was a big step up from GPT-3. GPT-3 was the one that kind of opened everybody's eyes to the fact that, wow, this is actually a big deal here. GPT-5 is the next version after GPT-4, which is quite advanced. Like everybody else is being measured against GPT-4, and they say, well, this is a GPT-4 equivalent model. For example, the latest ones from Google, people like that. The fact that GPT-5 is going to be a big advance, I think that they're holding it back because it's so advanced. So they're kind of just getting us ready for it, really. And that's something that Sam Altman has mentioned before, that, and I'll give you a quote from him, but that, they sometimes deliberately slow down the pace because they want to allow society to adapt to the capabilities of these things. AI agents are something that is going to be, you're going to hear an awful lot more about that over the next year or two. And agents are, so the way we're using AI typically right now is we're having a chat with a chatbot. So we're typing in or speaking, and you can speak to it, by the way. If you install the app on your phone, you can have a conversation literally with it. But AI agents are these more autonomous AI where you can set it up to do multi-step actions. So, for example, an agent, I might be able to say, I want to travel to Mallorca and stay in Palma. So I want you to book me the flights and the hotel, and here's access to my email, and do all the verification stuff that you need to do. Just go and do that. Here's the dates that I want to do, or pick the dates off my calendar. Now, the agents are going to be able to do that at some point in the future, where we'll be able to just give them tasks and get it to go and do those things. So you can see you'll be able to automate complex tasks and repetitive tasks. Robotics is also getting a big shot in the arm of investment because of the development of AI, and OpenAI have actually partnered with a company where they've put they've put ChatGPT and the audio version of ChatGPT, where you can have a conversation. They've put that into a physical robot, and they were able to get the robot to pick up an apple and put a plate into a drying rack and things. So the technology in robotics is getting added. AI reasoning is getting added to robotics, and then robotics itself is also getting a big investment because of this, because there's trillions of dollars being put into all of this development. Ultimately, down the line, there's a thing called AGI, artificial general intelligence, and that's the thing that is both incredibly scary, and the potential is very positive as well. The issue is so artificial general intelligence, or AGI, is where an AI gets to the stage where it is as smart as a human being and can reason in the same way. And we don't know when it'll get there, but it probably is going to get there. And so the issue is that could lead to a complete change in how we think about work, education, and society. Because, for example, if computers and if AI can do all of the knowledge work and can do everything that we do, like, how does that impact our education system? How does that impact our society? Like, do we sit about on the couch, scratching our ass and looking at TV? Is that the future of our race? So there's all sorts of really scary things about what can happen there. And then the flip side of that is, well, maybe that will, maybe it will create a lot of it'll create a lot of new jobs. It'll create, people will be able to work less. There's all sorts of different implications of that as well. So one example that OpenAI put out as a case study, sorry, I don't know why that screen is flashing. I hope it's not flashing for you guys. One example is Moderna. Moderna is the company that make the vaccines. And so they have implemented ChatGPT and OpenAI in their systems. And so they're finding that a team of a few thousand can perform like a team of 100,000. So they've got a team of, I don't know, maybe 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 employees, something like that. And they're saying that they can have the same productivity as a team of 100,000. So this is pretty incredible in terms of productivity. And after 2 months of adoption, so only 2 months, after 60 days, employees were having 120 conversations per week on average. That's each employee is having 120 conversations per week. So that's these chat conversations with the chatbots. So that's around one conversation every 20 minutes that they're having. And the bots that they're using are helping them to do their job better. Now, for example, one of the things that they used as an example in the case study was they have a legal compliance bot. Their own version, which has been customized just to scan legal documents, and they give it a contract and they ask it to give them a summary of the contract and call out what the things are they need to look for. And this is stuff that we can all do, by the way. This doesn't have to be Moderna. You can do this right now if you want to, but that's the power of these tools in terms of productivity. And also then, well, do you need to call a lawyer? Well, that's a good question. So the issues are like for lawyers and for all knowledge workers, a lot of the grunt work that we do as knowledge workers, as experts, may be taken over by these systems as they learn more and get smarter. So here's another quote from Sam Altman. We've been through massive technological shifts, and a massive percentage of the jobs that people do can change over a couple of generations. And over a couple of generations, we absorb that. So as a society, we absorb that. every technological revolution has gotten faster, and this will be the fastest by far. And the part that I find potentially a little scary is the speed with which society is going to have to adapt. So, like we have seen, for example, we changed, like humanity has changed over time. When we saw the development of, the development of cars, there would have been farriers and blacksmiths and carriage, drivers, and, there'll be people managing stables. They all lost their jobs because of the introduction of cars. And so in the same way, this introduction is going to change. The only issue is this is happening very, very quickly. And I think that's the thing that people are both fatigued by and scared by, how does this impact on us? So it's interesting. So I started a podcast called the AI Powered Thought Leader. And because it was interesting in its impact on thought leaders in particular, and I'm probably going to rename this, by the way, to the AI Powered Business Leader, because I think that the general implications in business are very interesting. So I've spoken with a lot of thought leaders and really smart people. I decided I wanted to talk to a lawyer about the legal issues, so I spoke to a lawyer about the legal perspective, and she's an IP lawyer, so she had a good perspective on that. I spoke with people like Mark Schaefer and Chris Doe and Jonathan Stark. Mark Schaefer is author of, 15 books. He's a leader in marketing. Chris Doe has, maybe 4 million people following him on YouTube. So that's the type of people I've been talking to about this, just to get their perspective on this. So here are some takeaways that I've taken from speaking with some really smart people about this, about how we can implement this in our business. So AI is increasing our productivity, and it's doing that by helping us to automate repetitive tasks. It can help us to do things like analyze research, reformat content, and it allows us to focus on our core expertise. That's the really interesting thing about this. And so that's the positive side of this is we can increase our productivity and do more and not have to work on the grunt work. So the repetitive tasks, that's a big one for me personally. The analyzing research is really interesting. So I did a survey of over 1,000 consultants a couple of years ago, and I pulled out, I read through all the data, and I pulled out all of the insights manually myself, originally when I did it in 2019, 2020. Now I took all my survey data, and I just fed it into Google's AI Studio. Google's AI Studio is interesting because there's a version of it, a beta version of it, that we can access that can take up to 1 million tokens. What that means that it can read a lot of data. So one of the big limitations right now with these systems is the amount of information you can feed into them. The more information you can feed in, the better the output usually. The Google AI Studio is really interesting because you can put in 1 million tokens, which is about the equivalent of 3 or 4 business books. So you can give it 3 or 4 business books worth of input and ask it to process that. So I was able to give it all of the survey data that I had from this big survey and asked it to pull out insights. And it was really interesting. It was able to pull out the same insights that I had spent hours, days, weeks doing manually. It did it in 25 seconds. It was incredible. So doing things like that, analyzing research and reading documents, all of that stuff, reformatting content, so stuff that we've already done. So for example, I'm talking to you now and I'm recording this. And so I can take the recording, I can take the transcript of that, and I can ask it to reformat that as a blog post, for example. And so I find that really interesting that it can just instantly reformat content. And that gives me more time back, allows me to take something that I've done and reuse it in different ways. So that's the productivity side of things. One of the issues that I found, particularly in terms of thought leadership, is how do we stay authentic? So one of the things is if we're writing, we have to be careful that we don't compromise our own credibility. So, for example, if you post something up on LinkedIn that you got AI to write for you, and people see that it's clearly written by AI, because sometimes it's easy to tell by the word choices and things like that, the formatting even, that could potentially compromise your credibility as an expert, because people see that you didn't write it yourself. So where is the line for using AI to generate stuff for us, or when we add our own thoughts into this? So where is that line lie? And it can come across. It's clearly not in your voice, so you have to be careful about how you use it to generate. And then there's also potentially a danger of becoming over-reliant on these systems. One of the things that I've noticed, and I've written a couple of books, I've got two regular-sized books, and then I've got 4 or 5 booklets, and they're all up on Amazon. And one of the things that I've noticed is that the process of writing is how I develop my own thinking. So when I write, that helps me to formulate my thinking, and it helps me to think better because I'm trying to explain a concept. And so if we're using AI to do more of our writing for us, we have to be careful because it may take away from that thinking that we normally do. So be careful of the over-reliance of it as well. Another issue is authorship, credit, and intellectual property. So first off, the concept of being an author is being redefined. And so this is something like to say that I wrote that. So my friend Joe Casabona, we had a fun conversation about this actually about 6 or 8 months ago. He said that using ChatGPT to write a book, saying that you wrote a book using AI is like saying that you used a car to run a marathon. And it's an interesting kind of comparison. So where is the line in claiming credit for writing something? So if I sit down and I type out and I write something, then I've clearly written it. If I use a dictation tool and I'm driving to Dublin and I dictate and record that dictation, and then I say, please transcribe that, and it takes my words verbatim, then you'd probably say that I wrote that. What happens if I dictate it and then I say, I want you to tidy that up and pull out the key points and then reformat it as a chapter of a book? Now the line is kind of getting blurred. Did I write that or did I not write that? Because I provided the ideas, but I didn't write the specific words that are there. So the line gets more and more blurred the more you use this assistance. And then there's legal and ethical issues around ownership. So in the US, the Supreme Court ruled that works that are generated by AI are not copyright protectable. They're not copyrightable. And so again, all of this, it's not as simple as it sounds on the surface. And it's worthwhile listening to the conversation I had with Aaron Austin if you're interested in that side of things. But the lines. So if we put ideas in to AI and then get it to give us back, then it may be somewhat protected by copyright, but it's not a straightforward thing. And then claiming credit. So do we say, like Joe said, you can't claim credit if the AI wrote it for you? But what's the definition of wrote it? Because if your input is if you're putting a lot of stuff in, I'll give you an example. So I have a custom ChatGPT bot, a custom GPT, which is when you create your own version and you put your own text into it. And so in one of the ones that I've created, I put the text of all of my books and all of my blog posts. So I put all of my content in there, and I taught it how to write in my voice, in my writing style. Now, if I use that bot to write something, can I claim ownership for what it writes because I provided the input? Where's the line there? It's interesting, and it's like this is all challenging. There are also ethical issues. So, for example, there may be inbuilt biases, stolen training data, that should say, not date, and then there's privacy and GDPR. So, for example, an inbuilt bias. So one of the issues is what are these trained on? So these models, these large language models, are typically trained on billions of pages of text, and there are inbuilt biases. So, for example, when these systems came out first, and I think these have been fixed, if you said, for example, give me an image of a beautiful woman, every time, 100% of the time, if you ask that over and over and over again, it would always give you a blonde white woman. And that's just an instinctive inbuilt bias because what it was trained on And what our media consists primarily of is the idea that a beautiful woman is a white woman, and that's just because of cultural reasons. So if there's inbuilt biases like that, and that's only one example. There's so many other potential racism, all of those political leanings, all of those biases that could be present in training data. And so we need to be aware of there could be potentially biases in the systems that we're using, and just be careful about how we use that. A second thing is there's a lot the stolen training data. So basically, these systems, when they trained them, they just took entire libraries worth of books and used them to train. They took, for example, the entire archive of the New York Times and put all of the articles in there, and the New York Times sued OpenAI for it. And I think that lawsuit is complete. I think they were found guilty. I'm not sure, but those are just examples. So if you're an author and you know that like let's say Terry Pratchett or something like that. So if you said, write a story in the style of Terry Pratchett, and here's what I want you to do. Now, Terry Pratchett is no longer with us, but his estate could say, hey, you can't use, you can't train on all of Terry's books and then use it to create a book based on that, because that's his intellectual property. And then the question is it? And so that's what the lawyers are fighting about. There's also privacy issues. And GDPR is one of the reasons why in Europe I can't use Google AI Studio, for example, the tool I just mentioned, unless I VPN. So unless I pretend I'm coming in from a US IP address. And one of the reasons for that is because we have a lot of privacy protections in terms of GDPR. And so the AI companies are trying to figure out how to do that. So right now they're just blocking access on some of the tools. We don't get the same access as if we were coming from the US. We have more access in using these tools, and that's because of privacy and GDPR. So, for example, I use an AI note taker quite often when I'm doing calls with my clients, when I'm doing calls with people. Now, the AI note taker that I personally use has a notice. So when somebody joins, they see Alastair McDermott is recording this for note-taking purposes. Now, that note taker takes the conversation that we have, it processes the audio, it transcribes it and puts it into its database, which I can then ask it to give me, a summary of the call. Now, for example, if I'm having a call with a client about their website, and I say, look, here's what we're going to do. And they tell me about their website issues. And maybe they tell me something about their business. Maybe they tell me something personal on that call. All of that is gone into the AI's and being processed and gone into the AI's memory. The AI companies may train their next models on that. There are serious privacy implications in terms of if we record conversations and put that information in there. For example, if I got an email from a client where let's say it's a website inquiry, and I copy paste that email into the AI system, and I say, I want you to process this, and I want you to give me a response. I want to give them a quote, or let's set up a meeting, or tell me what the important points are that they really care about. I can do lots of different things with that information once I put it in. But if I don't take their name or their business name off that email before I feed it into the AI may have a copy of that. And that's something that we need to be careful of is the privacy implications of this. So those are all things that we need to think about. So here's what an AI-ready business might look like. One thing I suggest that every business does is to become AI-ready in terms of culture and structure. So kind of best practice for this, I think, is to pick people in different teams in your business and appoint them to say, look, you are the AI team. We want you to explore how we can use AI in the business, and give them the tools to do that. Promote AI literacy. So this is one of the most important things for all of us, whether we're solo business owners or whether we've got a large business, is investing in education and training for ourselves and for employees to have a basic understanding. and understand what the potential applications are, and to create this culture where being innovative and being responsible about how we use AI, and being aware of the things like the privacy and ethical issues. And a place you can start is to look at use cases for specific things. And you can look at, where can we be more efficient? How can we increase our productivity, or how can we give a better customer experience using AI? So start looking at case studies and ways that you can use AI today, and start adopting its use. And I would strongly suggest having a policy, so having guidelines about how you use these tools. And this is particularly important where we've got things like GDPR and privacy issues. So, one of the issues that Aaron Austin, the lawyer, talked to me about is when we're creating content, there is a big difference between creating content where we intend to sell that content versus where we don't intend to sell it. So, for example, if I was to use AI in helping me to write a book that I want to sell, that's a very different use case in terms of the implications, the legal implications of ownership, versus if I was to use it to write a LinkedIn post. So I would be much more comfortable using it to write a LinkedIn post. I would be much more careful about using it to write a book that I wanted to sell, for example. So creating policies around how we use it, and talking to people about those policies. And then continuous evaluation. This is really important. AI space is moving rapidly, so we have to continuously evolve and continuously evaluate and experiment. So like, there's no place for head in the sand here. Like, we have to continuously evolve and look at these things and talk to people about it. So that's it from me. I would love to talk to anybody. I'm particularly looking to do some small case studies with some businesses who are interested in doing AI, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about it. That's my email address, amd@websitedoctor.com. If you scan the QR code, it will set up a virtual meeting with me, and I'd love to chat with anybody I'd love to chat with anybody anytime, but specifically about AI, I'm really interested in talking to people about how they might implement it.